Hi, my name is Alex Delphin, and welcome back to another episode of Ex Ante. Today we're going to discuss the case Stern v. Marshall. This case was heard in the Supreme Court of the United States in the year 2011. Let's go ahead and jump into the facts of the case. So, Stern and Marshall, the parties here named, are both executors of estate. That means that both of the people that actually got into this dispute are now deceased. So, what's the brunt of the dispute? Well, Mr. Marshall was a very, very wealthy man, billionaire, lots and lots of money. Well, he married a woman named Vicky, and Vicky basically got cut out of his will. She didn't get any money when he died, and she's pretty angry about that, as you could imagine. I mean, this was his wife, and she didn't get anything when the billionaire died, and so she's mad at the son. She's really mad at Mr. Marshall's son. She thinks that Mr. Marshall's son cut her out of the estate, wrongfully cut her out of the estate, by manipulating the father and doing these types of things. So that is not where the case arises. The case that we are hearing arises in a bankruptcy court. Ms. Vicky had filed for bankruptcy in Texas, and she had filed for bankruptcy because she didn't have the money, right? She didn't get the billions of dollars from her deceased husband. Well, there was also another case going on here in Texas. And this other case in Texas, not in a bankruptcy court, she tried to sue the son to try and get money, right? To say, hey, you wrongfully took away my inheritance from my deceased husband. Well, her stepson won in that case. And so there's a judgment out there sitting that says, hey, you can't recover money from the estate. He didn't wrongfully interfere with your inheritance. But now she's in the bankruptcy court, right? And the stepson he's ticked off. And so he comes in and he files a defamation proof of claim. And so he comes in, he says, you defamed me when you filed this lawsuit, when you've been talking poorly about me throughout the community. So I want to recover for defamation. Now, is he going to get anything out of this? Probably not, right? She's filing for bankruptcy. If she files for bankruptcy, that probably means that her assets don't exceed her liabilities. And there's probably a whole lot of people that are going to get paid before the billionaire's stepson. But you can tell this is just an act of vengeance. He's pissed off. He's probably got money with attorneys, and so he wants to do that. Well, she counterclaims. And she says, you wrongfully interfered with my estate and with the opportunity to get money from my deceased husband. Well, the bankruptcy court, very different from the other court, says, yeah, you win, Miss Vicky. You win. Money is yours. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And so now the son is freaking out, right? He's super freaking out. And so he appeals it to the district court. The district court essentially says, we lacked jurisdiction to enter this ruling on Vicky's counterclaim. It bubbles all the way up to the Supreme Court, and that's this decision. Before we kind of jump into the Supreme Court's opinion, it's also important to know the structure of bankruptcy judges in the United States. Well, bankruptcy judges are not appointed by the president. They're not officers. They're not really Article III judges. They kind of have a unique carve-out in our constitutional system. They are underneath district court judges. So district court judges kind of oversee our bankruptcy judges. They are specialized judges. They're almost administrative in a sense, but they're much more close to the judiciary because, they are a part of the judiciary. They're overseen by the district court. There's groups of bankruptcy judges that sit on appeals. It's really just a unique area of our judiciary, and structurally it's unique. And so there's been a series of cases, and this is one of them. We're talking about, is this constitutional? Can these people enter final judgments? And if they can, what is the scope of where they can enter final judgments? And that's really where we come down here. Chief Justice Roberts, writing for the majority, says, you know what, this counterclaim is kind of outside of the scope of the bankruptcy court's authority. The bankruptcy judges aren't Article III judges, which means they're not as independent as Article III judges. They don't have salary protections. They don't have life tenure. Our Constitution was set up in a way to ensure that the judiciary was independent. At least that was the hope by our framers. And he cites Hamilton and Madison and our framers' ideas about why we needed an independent judiciary. It ultimately comes back to the fact that the judiciary was not really independent from the king in England. And we wanted a neutral arbiter to decide disputes in our constitutional system. And so certain disputes require a neutral arbiter. And those would be where public rights aren't at issue. What are public rights? It sounds like a big fuzzy term, and it kind of is. But in essence, it would be the government versus another party. So the SEC versus someone else, or the FTC versus someone else. Those can be tried outside of an Article 3 court, as long as they're subject to some appellate review. But here, this is not really a public right, and that's where this comes down to. This is a private right. This is, Vicky versus the stepson, right? Or executors, but brunt of it, Vicky versus the stepson, private party versus private party. And the bankruptcy court does not have the authority to adjudicate that claim. It is a state law tort claim, and it is outside the scope of the bankruptcy court's authority. And so that's the holding. Justice Scalia kind of comes and he says, hey, this has gotten really convoluted, and, he likes bright line rules. He wants to come back and say, let's just have a bright line rule. Public rights, okay. Anything private is bad, and let's just make it clear. Let's try and give some bankruptcy courts some settled Supreme Court opinions so they don't feel like their constitutionality is constantly up in the air. Then you have a dissent from the liberal bloc of the court where they say, this was okay. This was fine. And Justice Ginsburg is essentially, she's a civil procedure professor. And, something that in oral argument really came out in this case is she's talking about how when the stepson came in and sued her on that defamation claim, he's basically consenting to the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court. He has consented at that point. When he voluntarily came in, he wasn't hailed in. Vicky didn't sue the stepson. The stepson came in and filed a defamation claim in the bankruptcy court. And when he did that, he essentially consented to the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court. And that's something that they harp on. They also kind of harp on the fact that, efficiency might be very important. And here we can be really efficient if we allow these bankruptcy judges to adjudicate claims that are related to the bankruptcy. And here, both of those claims are related to the bankruptcy. And so that's kind of the debate on the constitutional side. It's also important to note there's a minor point. Everyone's consensus on this, that the bankruptcy code does give the bankruptcy courts jurisdiction to hear these claims. But it was ultimately the Constitution that made it so that the court found that, hey, bankruptcy court, sorry, this is outside of your scope. So it's an interesting debate. It's interesting when you look at what maybe the framers' intentions were to set up a neutral arbiter. It's also, the dissent has interesting arguments as well. Would it be better to just have an efficient system where all of these claims can get adjudicated at once and we can all move on with our life? That is something that we really look fondly upon in the judiciary. And bankruptcy judges are usually highly qualified individuals that are overseen by the district court, who are all Article 3 judges. But you really have the majority coming out on a very formalist side and saying, these structures are here for a place, and we're going to guard these structures are here for a reason, and we're going to guard these boundaries between our branches and guard the boundary around Article 3 with high walls and make sure that people aren't trying to take power from us. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.